The day Clara Brennan served breakfast to the stranger with eyes like winter storms. She had no way of knowing he would become the measure of every hour that followed. It was late March in 1876, and Red Cloud, Nebraska existed as little more than a collection of wooden buildings clustered along the Burlington and Missouri River Railroad tracks. Her father's inn stood 2 stories tall on the main street, one of the sturdier establishments in a town still finding its footing on the vast prairie. Clara had just turned 19 that winter, and though her mother had died bringing her younger brother into the world 5 years prior, she ran the kitchen and dining room with practiced efficiency that belied her years. The cowboy entered during the morning rush when the dining room hummed with conversation from railroad workers and cattle buyers. He removed his hat at the door, revealing dark hair that needed cutting, and made his way to the corner table without meeting anyone's gaze. His boots were worn but well maintained, his clothing dusty from travel but not ragged. Clara noticed the way he moved carefully, as though his body still remembered some old injury. "Coffee?" she asked, approaching with the pot already in hand. His eyes lifted to hers, and she found herself momentarily arrested by their pale blue intensity. "Please," he said, his voice quiet and rough from disuse, "and whatever breakfast you have ready." She poured his coffee and returned to the kitchen, emerging minutes later with eggs, thick sliced bacon, biscuits, and gravy. He thanked her with a nod and ate slowly, methodically, his attention fixed on his plate. Unlike the other men who called out to her, made jokes, or tried to catch her eye, this stranger seemed to exist in his own contained world. When he finished, he left exact payment plus a small additional coin and departed without fanfare. Clara cleared his table and thought nothing more of it until the next morning when he appeared again at the same time, took the same corner table, and ordered the same meal with the same quiet courtesy. By the 4th day, she had his coffee poured before he sat down. He noticed, and something that might have been surprise flickered across his weathered face. "You remembered," he said. "You sit in the same spot and order the same thing," Clara replied. "Not hard to notice a pattern. Most people do not notice much at all." He wrapped his hands around the cup as though warming them, despite the mild spring morning. "I appreciate it." His name, she learned over the following weeks, was Daniel Vance. He offered it simply one morning when her father came out to greet the regular customers. Thomas Brennan was a broad man with a booming voice who knew everyone's business, and he extended his hand to the quiet stranger with genuine warmth. "Cannot say I have seen you around Red Cloud before this past month," Thomas said. "Passing through or staying?" "Working on the Patterson Ranch," Daniel replied, his handshake brief but firm. "Hired on as a hand. Good outfit. Patterson runs honest cattle." Thomas glanced at Clara. "My daughter taking proper care of you." "Better than proper," Daniel said, and his eyes met hers for just a moment before returning to his breakfast. The Patterson Ranch lay 5 miles west of town, which meant Daniel rode in early each morning before beginning his work day. Clara began to wonder what drove a man to make that journey daily for a simple breakfast when the ranch surely provided meals. She was too proud to ask directly, so she learned about him in fragments, piecing together his story from overheard conversations and rare comments. He had come up from Texas with a cattle drive 2 years prior and stayed north after breaking several ribs in a riding accident. By the time he healed, winter had set in too deep for southern travel, so he worked odd jobs until Patterson hired him permanently that spring. He was skilled with horses, patient with the temperamental ones that other hands avoided. He did not drink, did not gamble, and kept to himself in a way that seemed less unfriendly than deeply habitual. Clara found herself watching for him each morning, listening for the distinctive sound of his boots on the wooden porch. She began preparing his breakfast fresh, rather than serving him from the warming pans, though she told herself this was simply good service. The biscuits she made were lighter, the bacon crisper, the eggs cooked exactly to the soft consistency she noticed he preferred. "That cowboy is sweet on you," her younger brother Michael announced one morning in the kitchen, his 12-year-old face smug with perceived wisdom. "He barely speaks," Clara replied, whisking eggs more vigorously than necessary. "Exactly. He looks at you like you are the only person in the whole dining room." He looks at his plate. "Now take these biscuits out before they cool." But Michael's words had planted themselves in her mind, and she began to notice the small things. The way Daniel's shoulders straightened slightly when she approached his table. How his fingers absently straightened the silverware when she was near, as though nervous hands needed occupation. The care with which he always left his table neat, his chair pushed in, his payment exact and fair. May arrived with prairie flowers painting the grasslands in wild profusions of color. The inn's garden began producing fresh vegetables, and Clara experimented with her recipes, adding variety to the breakfast offerings. Daniel never requested anything different, but she occasionally brought him small additions anyway. Fresh strawberries when they ripened. A slice of the honey cake she had perfected. He accepted each offering with quiet thanks and what she increasingly recognized as genuine pleasure. "These are remarkable," he said one morning, sampling the strawberries. "Do you grow them here, behind the inn?" "My mother started the garden and I have been expanding it each year." Clara refilled his coffee, though the cup was still half full, looking for a reason to linger. "She had a gift for making things grow. Seems she passed it to you." Daniel's voice softened. "My mother kept a garden too back in Missouri. I remember the strawberries." It was the most personal information he had volunteered, and Clara felt the significance of it. "You are from Missouri originally," small farm outside Springfield, long time ago now. His expression clouded briefly before clearing. "These taste just like hers. That is a rare thing, to be reminded of good memories." She wanted to ask what had happened, why he had left, what had carved those lines around his eyes that had nothing to do with age. But the dining room needed attention, and the moment passed. Still, something had shifted between them. A small door opened. The routine continued through spring into summer. Daniel arrived each morning without fail, in rain or oppressive heat, through dust storms that turned the air brown and mornings so clear the sky seemed infinite. He spoke little but listened when Clara talked, her words coming more freely as weeks became months. She told him about running the inn with her father, about Michael's dreams of becoming a railroad engineer, about the books she ordered from Omaha and read late into the night. "What kind of books?" Daniel asked one quiet morning in late June. "Everything. Novels mostly, poetry sometimes." Clara felt oddly self-conscious admitting it. "Probably seems foolish." "No," he said firmly. "Reading is never foolish. Words are how we learn there are bigger worlds than the ones we can see." "Do you read?" "Used to, more than I do now. Working ranch hours does not leave much time for it." He paused, then added, "But I would like to, again, if you ever wanted to recommend something." She brought him a book the next morning, a volume of Whitman's poetry that had moved her. Daniel accepted it with careful hands, as though she had given him something precious. He returned it 2 weeks later with pages clearly well turned and a depth of gratitude in his eyes that made her breath catch. "Thank you," he said simply. "It has been a long time since I read anything that felt true." They began trading books after that. A quiet exchange that required few words but created a connection deeper than casual conversation. Clara learned about Daniel through his choices. practical volumes on horse training, but also novels of adventure and exploration, a book of natural history, even a slim collection of Greek myths. He read voraciously, she realized, feeding some hunger that the physical work of the ranch could not satisfy. Summer heat settled over the Nebraska prairie in July, making the inn's kitchen almost unbearable by midday. Clara rose earlier to do her baking before the sun climbed high, which meant she was often alone in the dining room when Daniel arrived. These quiet mornings became her favorite part of each day. With no other customers to serve, she could sit for a few minutes at his table, sharing coffee while the world remained still and peaceful outside. "Patterson mentioned you have a real gift with the horses," she said one such morning. "He told my father you can gentle a wild horse faster than anyone he has seen." Daniel looked uncomfortable with the praise. "Just patience. Most fear in horses comes from rough treatment. They respond to gentleness better than force. I think it is more than that." Clara had seen plenty of cowhands pass through Red Cloud, many of them competent but few inspiring such specific praise. "Patterson is not easily impressed. He is a good man to work for. Fair." Daniel traced the rim of his coffee cup. "I have worked for men who were not, so I appreciate it more, perhaps." Clara heard the weight behind those words, the experiences he did not elaborate on. "Is that why you left Texas?" He was quiet for a long moment, and she worried she had pushed too far. But then he spoke, his voice low. "The outfit I worked for down south, the owner had a temper and poor judgment. Pushed the cattle too hard, pushed the men harder. I spoke up when I should have stayed quiet, and he did not appreciate it. The broken ribs were not entirely an accident." Anger flared hot in Clara's chest. "He hurt you deliberately. Let us say he created the situation knowing what would likely happen." Daniel met her eyes. "But I survived it and found my way here, so maybe that was how things needed to unfold. You could have been killed, could have been, was not." His expression gentled. "And if I had not been injured, I would have gone back to Texas with the drive and never known Red Cloud existed. Never known this inn made the best breakfast in Nebraska." The way he said it, the way he looked at her, made it clear he meant more than the food. Clara felt heat rise to her face that had nothing to do with the summer temperature. "I should check on the kitchen," she said, suddenly flustered, and fled before he could respond. But the next morning she was back at his table during the quiet hour, and the morning after that. They talked about small things and large ones, about the rhythm of prairie seasons and the loneliness of being young and without mothers. Daniel revealed himself in careful increments, and Clara found herself doing the same, sharing thoughts she had told no one else. "Do you ever want to leave Red Cloud?" he asked one August morning when the heat had everyone moving slowly. Clara considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I wonder what lies beyond Nebraska, but this is home. My father needs me and Michael is still young. Maybe someday, but not now." "What about you? Do you plan to stay?" "I have nowhere else I need to be." Daniel's pale eyes held hers. "And reasons to stay that grow stronger all the time." Her heart hammered against her ribs, but before she could respond, the door opened to admit a group of early travelers, and the moment dissolved into the needs of service. September brought cooler temperatures and the urgent work of harvest season. The inn filled with migrant workers and buyers, keeping Clara busy from dawn until late evening. Daniel still came every morning, his presence a constant in the chaos, but their quiet conversations shortened by necessity. She missed those talks more than she had expected, missed the way his rare smiles had begun appearing more frequently, missed the sound of his voice in the peaceful early hours. One Sunday morning, in late September, Clara woke to find the inn unusually quiet. Her father had taken Michael to visit friends at a neighboring farm, leaving her alone with minimal breakfast service expected. When Daniel arrived, only 2 other tables were occupied, both by quiet elderly men absorbed in their newspapers. "Peaceful this morning," Daniel observed, accepting his coffee. "My father is away for the day. Most of Red Cloud is sleeping late, I think." Clara made a decision that felt both reckless and overdue. "I was planning to take a walk after breakfast service. The prairie is beautiful this time of year. Would you want to join me?" Surprise crossed Daniel's face, followed by something that looked like cautious hope. "I would like that very much." An hour later, they walked together beyond the edge of town where the grasslands stretched endlessly golden under the autumn sun. Clara had packed leftover biscuits and fresh apples in a basket, thinking they might find a spot to rest. Daniel walked close enough that their hands occasionally brushed, sending sparks through her nerves each time. "I have wanted to do this for months," he said finally, his voice rough. "Asked to spend time with you outside the inn, but I was not sure it would be welcome." Clara stopped walking and turned to face him. "Daniel Vance, you have been coming to my father's inn every single morning for 6 months. Did you think I had not noticed?" "I noticed you noticing." A hint of a smile played at his mouth. "But noticing and welcoming are different things." "Then let me be clear." Her heart pounded, but she held his gaze steadily. "Your presence is very welcome, has been from the beginning if I am being honest." The smile that broke across Daniel's face transformed him, erasing years of care from his features. "Clara Brennan, I have been half in love with you since the day you remembered how I take my coffee. I have been fully in love with you since you brought me strawberries and told me about your mother's garden. I ride 10 miles round trip every morning just to see you for an hour because that hour is the best part of every day I have lived this past year." She had imagined him saying such things in her private thoughts, but the reality of it made her breathless. "It has not been a year yet," she managed. "Another 3 months and it will be. I am patient." His hand reached up carefully, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face with incredible gentleness. "I would wait much longer than a year if that was what you needed." "I do not need more time," Clara said, and kissed him. His arms came around her carefully, as though she were something precious and fragile, though his kiss was anything but hesitant. Clara felt 6 months of restrained longing in the way he held her, matched by her own relief at finally closing the distance between them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were bright with emotion. "I do not have much," Daniel said quietly. "Ranch hand wages and a room in the bunkhouse, but I am a good worker, and Patterson has hinted at giving me more responsibility. In time, I could save enough to offer you a real home, a proper life." "Daniel." Clara took his face in both hands, making him look at her. "I do not need grand offers. I need you to keep coming to breakfast every morning. I need more walks like this one. I need you exactly as you are." They stayed out on the prairie until the sun began its descent toward the horizon, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses that grew less tentative and more familiar. When they finally walked back to town, Daniel's hand held hers openly, a declaration to anyone who might see. Thomas Brennan noticed immediately when they returned. His eyes moved from their joined hands to their faces and back again, his expression unreadable. Clara felt Daniel tense beside her, preparing for rejection or anger, but her father simply nodded slowly. "About time," Thomas said. "I was beginning to wonder if you were going to spend the whole year just staring at each other across the dining room." "Sir, I would like permission to court your daughter properly," Daniel said formally, despite Thomas's casual tone. "I know I am only a ranch hand, but I have honorable intentions and steady work. Son, Any man who rides 10 miles a day just to eat breakfast clearly has serious intentions. Thomas extended his hand. You treat her well, and we will have no problems. You treat her poorly, and you will discover I am a much larger man than you are. Daniel shook his hand firmly. I would expect nothing less, sir. The next months passed in a blur of happiness that Clara had not known existed outside of novels. Daniel still came every morning for breakfast, but now he arrived earlier and stayed longer when possible, helping with small tasks around the inn before heading to the ranch. On Sundays, his day off, they walked together or sat in the inn's garden, talking for hours while Clara did mending and Daniel read aloud to her. He was not demonstrative in public beyond holding her hand, but in private moments, his affection ran deep and constant. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie, seeds for her garden, a book of poetry he had ordered specially from Omaha. He fixed things around the inn without being asked, repaired the garden fence, gentled a temperamental horse her father had acquired. He made himself invaluable not through grand gestures, but through steady, reliable presence. Clara fell more deeply in love with him daily. She loved his quietness, the way his words mattered because he used them carefully. She loved his hands, scarred and capable, gentle with her and with frightened animals. She loved how he listened when she talked about expanding the inn's menu or her dreams of maybe opening a bakery someday. He took her seriously in a way that made her feel seen and valued. Winter arrived early that year, November bringing snow that transformed red cloud into something clean and beautiful. The morning crowds at the inn thinned as travel became difficult, but Daniel never missed a day. He arrived sometimes covered in snow, his coat crusted with ice, but always at the same time with the same quiet greeting. You do not have to ride through this, Clara said one particularly bitter morning. It is dangerous. I told you I would come every morning, Daniel replied, warming his hands on his coffee cup. I meant it, even in a blizzard, especially then. Those are the mornings you might worry, and I will not give you cause to worry if I can help it. His stubbornness both exasperated and touched her. You are going to freeze to death one morning, and then where will I be? You will be here, safe and warm, and I will be here with you. He reached across the table to take her hand. Clara, I have been thinking about the future. Her heart jumped. What about it? Patterson offered me the foreman position starting in the spring. It comes with a separate cabin on the ranch property and better wages. Daniel's thumb traced circles on her palm. It would be a real home, small but sound, enough for a family eventually. Daniel Vance, are you proposing to me over breakfast? He smiled, that full, genuine smile that still felt like a gift each time she saw it. Not yet. When I propose, it will be proper with a ring I have saved for, but I am asking if you would consider it when the time comes. If you could see a future with me on the Patterson ranch. Clara thought about leaving the inn, the only home she had ever known. It should have been difficult to imagine, but with Daniel it felt like possibility rather than loss. Would I be far from town? 5 miles. You could visit your father and Michael whenever you wanted. They could visit us. He was watching her carefully, trying to read her reaction. I know it is not much compared to the inn. It is a home with you. That is everything. She squeezed his hand. Yes, Daniel. When you ask properly, my answer will be yes. The joy on his face made her want to laugh and cry simultaneously. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles with such tenderness that several other diners smiled at the sight. December brought the holiday season and the 1-year mark of Daniel's first visit to the inn. He had marked the date in his mind apparently, because he arrived that morning with more than his usual quiet demeanor. He seemed nervous, his hands restless, his attention scattered. Are you feeling well? Clara asked, concerned. I am fine. Better than fine. He took a breath. Could you step outside with me for a moment? I know it is cold, but I have something I need to say. Clara's pulse quickened as she grabbed her shawl and followed him onto the porch. The December morning was crisp and clear, the sun just beginning to paint the sky with color. Daniel led her to the side of the building where they had a measure of privacy, then took both her hands in his. 1 year ago today, I walked into your father's inn because I was hungry and it was the nearest place to eat, he began. I had no idea that decision would change my entire life, but you served me breakfast and you smiled at me and something in my world shifted. Clara felt tears prick her eyes as he continued. Every morning since then, I have found excuses to come back. At first, I told myself it was just good food and good service. Then I admitted it was because I wanted to see you, to hear your voice, to exist in your presence for even a short time. He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket. I told you I would do this properly, with a ring I saved for. It took me a year, but I have it now. He drew out a simple gold band with a small but beautiful stone that caught the morning light. It was not elaborate, but it was honest and genuine, just like him. Clara Brennan, would you marry me? Would you build a life with me on the Patterson Ranch and let me spend every morning for the rest of my life making sure you know how loved you are? Yes, Clara said through tears. Yes, Daniel. Absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a passion that had built over 12 months of patient waiting. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing simultaneously. Thomas Brennan appeared in the doorway with suspiciously perfect timing, Michael peering around him with undisguised excitement. Well, Thomas called out. Do I need to start planning a wedding? You do, Father, Clara called back, holding up her hand to show the ring. About time, Thomas repeated, but his voice was thick with emotion. Come inside before you both freeze. We should celebrate properly. The wedding took place in early April, just as the prairie began greening after the long winter. Clara wore her mother's dress, altered to fit her, and carried wildflowers that Daniel had ridden out before dawn to collect. The ceremony was simple, held in Red Cloud's small church with half the town in attendance. Patterson gave Daniel the day off and attended himself, shaking his new foreman's hand with genuine warmth. You have got yourself a good man, Patterson told Clara. Best hand I have ever hired, and that is saying something. I know, Clara replied, watching Daniel talk with her father and brother. I am very lucky. So is he, Patterson said knowingly. Anyone can see that. The celebration lasted into the evening, with food from the inn and music from local musicians. Clara danced with her new husband under lantern light, his arms steady around her, his eyes never leaving her face. Happy? Daniel asked softly. Happier than I knew was possible, Clara answered truthfully. I stopped running the day I walked into your father's inn, he said. I just did not realize it until now. You gave me a home, Clara, not just a place to live, but a reason to stay, a reason to build something lasting. They spent their wedding night in the cabin on Patterson's ranch, the home Daniel had been preparing for months. It was small but well built, with a fireplace he had constructed himself and furniture he had made during winter evenings. He had even started a small garden plot beside the cabin, ready for Clara to plant in the coming weeks. You did all this yourself? She asked, moving through the space with wonder. I wanted it to be ready for you, for us. Daniel watched her nervously. I know it is not as grand as the inn. It is perfect, and it was. Clara could see their future in every corner of this cabin, could imagine meals cooked in that fireplace, children playing on that floor, years of life building upon itself into something beautiful and enduring. Their life together settled into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Clara split her time between the ranch and helping at the inn several days a week. Daniel continued his work as foreman, managing the ranch hands and cattle with quiet competence that earned universal respect. On Sundays, they often rode into town together for church, then had dinner with Thomas and Michael before returning home. The prairie summer bloomed around them, and Clara's garden flourished beyond her expectations. She grew vegetables and herbs, flowers for cutting, even managed to establish strawberry plants that reminded them both of precious memories. Daniel built her a larger chicken coop than she needed, insisting she would expand into it eventually. "You think you know me so well," Clara teased, watching him work. "I do know you." Daniel hammered the final nail and stood back to admire his work. "You start small and then dream bigger. You will have a dozen chickens before autumn." She had 15 by September, and he accepted her chagrined admission with a knowing smile. Their first year of marriage passed in a contentment that deepened rather than faded. They learned each other's rhythms and preferences, the small intimacies that built a shared life. Daniel was unfailingly thoughtful, remembering Clara's preferences, noticing when she needed help or space. Clara discovered that her quiet husband had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he felt comfortable, and she treasured the sound of his rare laughter. In November, Clara realized her monthly courses had not come for 2 months running. She waited another week to be certain before telling Daniel, wanting to be sure before raising hopes. When she finally shared the news one evening after dinner, his reaction was everything she could have wanted. "A baby," his voice cracked slightly. "We are having a baby next summer, I think, late June or early July." Daniel pulled her into his arms with fierce gentleness. "A baby," he repeated as though testing the word. "Clara, I never thought I would have this. A wife, a home, a family. It seemed like something meant for other men, not for me." "You deserve all of it," Clara said firmly. "You are going to be a wonderful father." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I hope so. I did not have a good example. My father was a hard man, quick with his fists and slow with kindness. I swore I would never be like that." Clara had suspected as much from comments Daniel had made over the months. "You are nothing like that. I have seen you with frightened horses and angry bulls, always patient, always gentle. You will be the same with our children." "Children." He pulled back to look at her, eyebrows raised. "Well, hopefully not all at once," Clara said with a smile. "But I grew up with a brother and I liked having family. Did you not? I was an only child. Maybe that is why my father was so harsh. He had no practice." Daniel's hand moved to rest gently on her stomach, where no evidence of pregnancy showed yet. "I like the idea of a big family. This house filled with noise and laughter." Winter passed slowly as Clara's body changed and grew. Morning sickness plagued her first months, and Daniel proved himself endlessly patient, bringing her dry biscuits before she rose, holding back her hair when she was ill, never complaining about interrupted sleep. As spring returned to the prairie and her sickness faded, Clara bloomed with energy and contentment. Daniel became almost comically protective, insisting she not lift heavy things or work too hard in the garden. When she pointed out that women had babies while doing far more strenuous work than she was attempting, he looked so distressed that she softened her protests. "I just want you safe," he said. "Both of you. We are safe. You are here and we are safe." Their son was born on a hot July afternoon with her father and a midwife from town in attendance. Daniel paced the yard outside for hours, too nervous to sit still, until Thomas finally took pity on him and brought him inside just as the baby arrived. Clara would never forget the expression on her husband's face when he first held their son, a mixture of awe and terror and overwhelming love. "He is so small," Daniel whispered, supporting the baby's head with exaggerated care. "He is perfect," Clara said tiredly. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never decided definitively. Daniel looked down at his son, and something softened in his expression. "What about Thomas, after your father? He has been more of a father to me this past year than my own ever was." Clara felt tears spring to her eyes. "Thomas Vance." "I love it." Thomas Sr., hearing his name from where he stood in the doorway, cleared his throat roughly and turned away, but not before Clara saw him wipe his eyes. Young Thomas proved to be a healthy, hungry baby who soon had them both exhausted and delighted. Daniel took to fatherhood with the same quiet competence he brought to everything, learning to change diapers and soothe crying with patient determination. Clara often woke in the night to find him already up, walking the floor with their son, singing softly in a voice she had never heard him use before. "You are spoiling him," she said one such night, finding them together by the fireplace. "Good," Daniel replied without apology. "He should be spoiled with love and attention. He should know from the beginning that he matters, that he is wanted." Clara understood what he was really saying, knew he was giving his son what he himself had never received. She came to stand beside them, and Daniel's free arm came around her, pulling her close so the three of them stood together in the firelight. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you more than I have words for." Daniel kissed her temple. "You gave me everything, Clara. Everything I never knew I needed." The years that followed brought more children. A daughter they named Catherine arrived 2 years after Thomas, then another son they called James. The cabin expanded with each addition, Daniel building on new rooms during winter months, Patterson giving him time and materials to accommodate his growing family. The ranch prospered, and Daniel's reputation as an exceptional foreman spread, though he turned down offers from larger outfits, preferring to stay where they had built their life. Clara continued helping at the inn several days a week, now bringing her children with her. Thomas Sr. delighted in his grandchildren, and Michael, now grown and working for the railroad as he had dreamed, visited whenever his route brought him through Red Cloud. The inn remained a central part of their lives, a connection to Clara's past and a bridge to their present. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised Clara by taking her back to the inn for breakfast, just the two of them while her father watched the children. "Remember this?" he asked, sitting at the same corner table where he had spent so many mornings. "How could I forget? You sat right there, barely speaking for months. I spoke. I ordered breakfast. You said please and thank you. That hardly counts as conversation." Clara smiled at the memory. "I thought you were the most mysterious man I had ever met. I thought you were beautiful and completely out of reach for someone like me." Daniel took her hand across the table. "I still cannot quite believe you said yes when I proposed. I would say yes again. Every day I would say yes." He reached into his pocket and drew out a small wrapped package. "I know we said no gifts, but I saw this in Omaha last month and could not resist." Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal, the kind Clara had admired in shop windows but never purchased for herself. The first page had an inscription in Daniel's careful handwriting, "For Clara, who gave me a story worth telling. All my love, Daniel." "I thought you could write down our story," he explained. "For the children, eventually, so they know how we found each other." Clara felt tears threatening. "It is perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that first cup of coffee, for noticing me, for taking a chance on a quiet cowboy who did not have much to offer except stubbornness and a willingness to ride 10 miles every morning just to see you smile. You offered me everything that mattered." Clara said. You still do. They sat in the inn's dining room as morning light streamed through the windows, holding hands across the table just as they had done countless times before. Some things changed, Clara reflected, and some things remained constant. Their love had deepened and evolved over 5 years of marriage and 3 children, but its foundation remained the same: trust, respect, and the choice to show up every day, no matter what. 10 years after Daniel first walked into the inn, they sat together on the porch of their expanded home, watching their 4 children play in the yard. Thomas was 9 now, responsible and serious like his father. Catherine at 7 was bold and curious, always covered in dirt from her explorations. James at 5 was gentle and thoughtful, content to sit with books or help his mother in the garden. And their youngest, 2-year-old Margaret, toddled between her siblings with determined energy. Remember when this cabin was barely big enough for 2 people? Clara asked, leaning against Daniel's shoulder. I remember thinking it was a palace because you were in it. His arm came around her shoulders. Now it barely contains all of us, and I love it even more. The house had grown rambling and comfortable, added onto as needs and resources allowed. It would never be grand, but it was filled with life and love, with children's laughter and the evidence of years spent building something together. Clara's garden had expanded to provide vegetables for their family and extra to sell in town. Daniel had been offered a partnership stake in the ranch, Patterson having no children of his own and appreciating Daniel's dedication and skill. Patterson asked me again today about buying into the ranch, Daniel said. He is serious this time, drew up papers with a lawyer in Omaha. What did you tell him? That I needed to discuss it with my wife. Daniel turned to look at her. It would mean borrowing money initially, taking on debt, but eventually we would own a portion of the land and cattle, something to pass to the children. Clara considered it carefully. Daniel had proven himself a cautious but wise decision-maker, and she trusted his judgment. Do you want it? I want security for our family. I want the children to have opportunities I never had. He paused. But only if you are comfortable with the risk. I married a cowboy who rode through blizzards just to have breakfast at my father's inn, Clara said with a smile. I think I am comfortable with risk, as long as we face it together. They signed the partnership papers the following month, becoming part owners in the Patterson Ranch. It was both thrilling and terrifying, but they approached it as they had approached everything in their marriage, with careful planning, hard work, and faith in each other. The children grew, and the ranch prospered. Thomas showed an aptitude for working with cattle like his father, while Catherine surprised everyone by developing a gift for mathematics that had Patterson putting her to work on the ranch accounts by age 12. James preferred books and nature, talking about maybe becoming a teacher someday. Margaret proved to be fearless on horseback, able to outride boys twice her age by the time she was 8. Clara's role expanded beyond mother and ranch partner. She began supplying baked goods to the inn and 2 other establishments in Red Cloud, her reputation for excellent bread and pastries spreading. What started as occasional baking grew into a small but profitable business, conducted from her kitchen with Margaret as her enthusiastic assistant. You were right, Daniel said one evening watching her organize orders. You started small and dreamed bigger. Now you are feeding half of Red Cloud. Not half, maybe a quarter. Clara smiled at him over her order book. Remember when you built me that chicken coop and said I would expand into it, and you said I was presumptuous. You were right then, too, about the chickens and about many things. She set down her pen and came to sit beside him. We have built a good life, have we not? Better than I ever imagined possible. Daniel pulled her close. Sometimes I still think about that morning I first walked into the inn, What if I had chosen a different place? What if I had been too proud to keep coming back day after day? But you did come back. Every single day for a year, and then you married me and came back every day after that too. Clara took his hand, fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. I think some things are meant to be, Daniel. I think you were meant to walk into that inn, and I was meant to remember how you took your coffee. I think you are right. He kissed her softly. Best breakfast I ever had. On their 15th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the inn for a celebration dinner. Thomas Sr. was graying now, but still robust, still running the inn with help from Michael between railroad runs. The dining room filled with people who had become part of their extended family over the years. Patterson and his wife, various ranch hands past and present, neighbors who had watched their family grow. Daniel stood to make a toast, his discomfort with public speaking evident but his voice steady. 15 years ago, I married the woman who saved my life without even knowing she was doing it. I was drifting then, just moving from place to place without purpose. Clara gave me a reason to stay, to build something, to become someone worth being. He looked at her with such open love that Clara felt her eyes fill. She gave me a home and a family. She gave me patience when I struggled and faith when I doubted. She made me a better man than I was, and she does it still every single day. Raising his glass, he continued. To Clara, who saw something in a quiet cowboy that he did not see in himself, and to all of you who helped us build this life, thank you. The toast was met with cheers and the clinking of glasses. Clara stood and kissed her husband to more cheers. Then they danced to the music provided by local musicians, moving together with the comfort of long familiarity. 15 more years, Daniel said as they swayed together. And 15 after that, and 15 more again. That would make us very old, Clara pointed out. Good. I want to be very old with you. I want to watch our children have children, and I want to sit on our porch in the evening sun and remember every moment that brought us here. Then that is what we will do, Clara promised. The years continued their steady march. Children grew into teenagers, then young adults. Thomas took over more responsibility on the ranch, working alongside his father. Catherine went to Omaha for additional schooling, returning with a head for business that she applied to expanding the ranch's operations. James became a teacher as he had hoped, working in Red Cloud's growing school system. Margaret married a neighboring rancher's son and started her own family nearby. Daniel's dark hair went gray, then white. Lines deepened around his eyes, though they were laugh lines now more than worry. Clara's hands became worn with years of work, but remained capable and strong. They moved a bit slower, needed more rest, but the core of who they were remained unchanged. Patterson passed when Daniel was 45, leaving his portion of the ranch to Daniel and Clara as thanks for years of devoted partnership. It made them wealthy by local standards, but they remained the same people they had always been. The cabin that had started so small now housed occasional grandchildren when their parents needed help, filled with life and noise and love, just as Daniel had dreamed. On a morning in early spring when Daniel was 50 years old, he rode into Red Cloud and stopped at the inn as he had done thousands of times before. The inn had been updated over the years, but remained fundamentally the same. Thomas Sr. had passed 2 years prior, and Michael now ran it with his wife and children. But Clara still helped out occasionally, and this particular morning she was there, serving breakfast just as she had done decades ago. Daniel took the same corner table without being told, and Clara brought him coffee without asking what he wanted. Some things never changed. You know, Daniel said as she set down his cup. I have been coming here for breakfast for 26 years now. Maybe I should try sitting somewhere else. You could, Clara agreed, sliding into the chair across from him. But then how would I know where to find you? You always know where to find me. He reached across the table to take her hand, their fingers intertwining automatically. Right where I have been since the beginning. Wherever you are. Clara smiled at him, her heart still capable of skipping at the sight of his eyes crinkling with affection. 26 years, and you still make me feel like that girl who first noticed a quiet cowboy who always chose the corner table. 26 years, and you still look at me like I am someone worth noticing. They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking coffee as morning light filled the dining room. Outside, Red Cloud was waking to another day on the Nebraska prairie. Inside, a love story that had started with breakfast continued its steady, enduring path. That evening, sitting on their porch and watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that first quiet morning to this moment of perfect contentment, every day had been a choice. Daniel had chosen to return each morning for a year, patient and persistent. Clara had chosen to notice him, to open her heart to the possibility he represented. Together, they had chosen to build something lasting. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Everything. Nothing. How grateful I am." Clara leaned into him. How a simple thing like serving breakfast became the beginning of everything that matters. "I am grateful too, every single day." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "See you tomorrow morning." It was an old joke between them, a callback to their early days. Clara smiled. "Tomorrow morning and every morning after." "Good," Daniel said. "That is exactly what I was hoping you would say." They sat together as twilight deepened into night, surrounded by the life they had created through years of small, faithful choices. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of growing things and the promise of seasons yet to come. Inside their home, lamplight glowed warm against the darkness, a beacon of all they had built and all they would continue to build together. Tomorrow Daniel would ride to the ranch and work alongside his son. Clara would tend her garden and fill orders for her baking customers. They would eat dinner with whatever combination of children and grandchildren appeared at their table, then sit together on this porch again as they had done for so many years. It was not a dramatic life by some measures. There were no great adventures or remarkable events to distinguish one day from another. But it was theirs, built moment by moment, choice by choice, from that first morning when a quiet cowboy had walked into an inn and found a girl who would remember how he took his coffee. And that, Clara thought, was the greatest adventure of all, to be known so deeply, to be loved so steadily. To wake each morning knowing that somewhere, someone was thinking of you, choosing you, riding through whatever weather came just to spend another hour in your presence. Daniel had done exactly that for a full year before they were even together. 26 years later, he was still doing it, still choosing her every single day in 1,000 small ways. And she was still choosing him, still grateful for the gift of his quiet presence, still in love with the man who had been patient enough to wait and brave enough to stay. Their story was written in coffee cups and shared mornings, in children raised and land tended, in words spoken and unspoken. It was written in the lines around their eyes and the gray in their hair, in capable hands that had worked together to build something beautiful from simple beginnings. The first star appeared in the darkening sky, and Clara made a wish as she had done since childhood. But what was there to wish for when everything she wanted was already here, solid and real and enduring? So instead, she gave thanks. For the stranger who became her husband, for the love that had sustained them through decades. For the life that continued unfolding, day by day, morning by morning, as steady and reliable as the sunrise. "I love you," she said into the peaceful night. "I love you too," Daniel replied, his voice carrying the weight of 26 years of meaning. "See you in the morning." And in the morning, he would be there, just as he had been every morning for more than a quarter century, just as he would be for all the mornings yet to come, until their time on this earth was complete and their story written in full. But that ending was still distant, still unwritten. For now, there was just this moment, this porch, this man beside her, and the life they had created together from the simple beginning of breakfast and coffee, and a girl who had noticed a quiet cowboy who always sat in the corner. Some love stories begin with drama and passion, with grand gestures and sweeping romance. Theirs had begun with patience and small kindnesses, with showing up day after day, with paying attention to details that others might have missed. And it had grown into something stronger and more beautiful than Clara could have imagined that first morning, when she had poured coffee for a stranger who would become her everything. The moon rose over the Nebraska prairie, casting silver light across the land they had worked and loved for so many years. Inside their home, the evidence of a life well lived surrounded them. Outside, the vast sky stretched endlessly above, full of stars and possibilities and the quiet promise of tomorrow. Daniel's hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. No words were needed. They had said everything that mattered and would say it all again tomorrow and the day after that. For now, it was enough to sit together in the peace they had built, grateful for the journey that had brought them here and ready for whatever came next. The inn where it all began still stood on Red Cloud's main street, still serving breakfast to travelers and locals alike. The corner table remained, and sometimes when Daniel and Clara visited together, they would sit there and remember. But mostly they looked forward, to grandchildren growing, to the ranch prospering, to the simple joy of waking beside each other and beginning another day together. Their love story was not about destiny or fate, though Clara sometimes thought perhaps those had played a role. It was about choice and persistence, about seeing value in another person and deciding they were worth the effort. It was about a cowboy who rode 10 miles every morning just for the chance to see a particular girl smile, and a girl who paid attention to how he took his coffee and realized that noticing small things could lead to something extraordinary. 26 years from that first meeting, they remained as committed to each other as they had been on their wedding day. More so, perhaps, because now they knew exactly what they had and what it was worth. They had weathered difficulties and celebrated triumphs. They had raised children and built a business. They had created a home that was rich in love even when money was tight, and they had done it together. As they finally rose to go inside for the night, Clara paused to look back at the prairie stretched out before them. This land had witnessed their entire love story, from beginning to wherever it would end. It had been the backdrop to their courtship and marriage, had provided for their family, had remained constant while everything else changed. "Thank you," she whispered to the night, to the land, to whatever force had brought Daniel to Red Cloud all those years ago. Daniel's arm came around her waist. "What are you thanking?" "Everything. The universe. The railroad that brought you north. The injury that kept you here. Every small thing that had to happen exactly right for us to find each other." "I thank those things too," Daniel said. "Every single day." They went inside together, closing the door on the night and beginning the familiar routine of preparing for bed. In the morning, they would wake to another day. Daniel would have coffee with his breakfast. Clara would smile at him across the table, and their love story would continue, as steady and enduring as it had been from the very beginning, because some things, Clara had learned, were worth waiting for, worth working for, worth choosing every single day, over and over again, for as long as life allowed. And Daniel Vance, the quiet cowboy who had returned every day for a year and then kept returning for 26 more, was worth all of that and more. Their story was simple in its elements, but profound in its meaning. It proved that love did not need to be complicated to be deep, did not need to be dramatic to be enduring. It just needed to be faithful and true and chosen consciously, day after day, morning after morning, for all the years that followed. As they settled into bed, Clara's last thought before sleep was of tomorrow's breakfast, and the man who would be there to share it with her, just as he had been and would be for as long as their story continued to unfold. And that was exactly how it should be.